The scariest books I've ever read. I've watched a few of these videos recently and I really enjoy them because as a fan of horror, I love both movies and books. I love being scared. Well, let's rephrase that. I love reading books and watching movies that scare me. I don't love generally being scared. So here are a list of books that, in my opinion, genuinely scared me. First up is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I don't think I've ever read a book quite like this that freaked me out so much and also made me want to vomit. It's a gruesome survival horror about a group of teenage boys on a remote camping trip. There's so many elements in there already that are just epic horror tropes. During this camping trip, they encounter a mysterious infected stranger, which, suffice to say, unleashes a terrifying chain of events. Isolated from any help, they must fight for survival as fear, infection, and madness takes hold. The level of body horror in this book is well above anything I'd read before. It is scarily written really well and gruesomely, and so actually for this and all of the books I'm going to talk about, please do check the content warnings. And I think this book, The Troop, now he has had another one since then, which I didn't love as much, but I've never read a book that literally I found so grotesque at times I had to take a break from reading. Like in a good horror way, if you really want to be grossed out, this book is for you. Do not eat while reading it. The concept of this book was really clever. I really enjoyed it. I don't want to give too much away, but I would say it gave me like layered Lord of the Rings, not Lord of the Rings, layered Lord of the Flies vibes. I loved the different perspectives and the multimedia formats within the book. Not only does Nick Cutter make me feel simultaneously terrified and repulsed while reading this, I was also like so gripped that I couldn't stop reading. It's kind of like you feel like you're rubbernecking. Phenomenal. Then there's one called The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. I actually read this one and a buddy read it this year. It's based on true crime, so with that in mind, I think this is one of the reasons that I think so many people find it really disturbing and a hard read, because it is so based on a terrible crime that happened. Was it in the 50s? I can't quite remember, and it's set in suburbia where two sisters, Meg and Susan, are left in the care of a really unstable aunt called Ruth. And Ruth is probably one of the most disturbing and cruel aunts you will ever meet. She descends into an abhorrent level of cruelty on these two kids. But not only that, Ruth's madness also spreads to the neighbourhood kids, as in the neighbourhoods get involved in some of the unspeakable torture of these two young girls, which kind of delves really deeply into the chilling depths of human cruelty and complicity of silence. Now, with that premise, I think you'll probably guess that this is terrifying and disturbing. Like, it scared me, not in a kind of jump scare way, but this impending dread, and then the descriptions of the cruelty is of a whole other level. And I think some of the criticisms of this book is about the fictionalisation or using the true crime for the basis of this story, but actually I think Jack Ketchum does a really good job of presenting this story in a very unflinching way, and in a way that his storytelling is, despite the subject matter, really, really good. He makes the reader see the brutality of this crime, but also sometimes monsters can just look like everybody else. Like, it's not the boogeyman, it can be the lovely lady in the neighbourhood, Aunt Ruth. Then we have, I think this was my first ever Ania Ahlborn, is Brother. In this story, I don't know why I'm laughing. I think it's nervous, scared laughter. In this story, we follow a boy named Michael who's been raised in this twisted family called the Blackwoods, I think. Immediately, it gave me Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes. That's all I'm going to say about that family. Apologies, just checked there. It's Backwoods, not the Blackwoods. The Backwood family basically spend most of their time in the kind of setting, like imagine it's like, you know, off the beaten track a little bit. They spend most of their time luring young women to murder them. And this is when Michael starts to really question the brutal life he's been forced to live in. And he kind of develops a bit of a dangerous friendship that threatens to unravel the only life he knows. Oh, literally there is one word for this book and it's utterly chilling. That's where the book's set. It's set in Appalachia, in a kind of setting, like I said, it's a bit Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, the modern one. The book is utterly disturbing, but it's cleverly done and it's woven into the deep thread of the story. It's not just gore for gore's sake. Which, don't get me wrong, sometimes, especially in movies and some books, I'm here for a bit of gore for gore's sake, but this is not what this author does. And Ania Ahlborn writes phenomenal characters. Michael, who's the main character in this book, is both, for some reason, Ania Ahlborn gets you to both feel empathy for him and utter terror at the same time. Because when she starts to unveil his backstory, you can't help but feel empathy and for his loss, but he's doing really bad stuff. His brother, Rebel, however, is a whole other story. He is utterly terrifying. Ahlborn does not shy away from deeply dark and disturbing topics, but I would also say in this book, there are moments of gentleness and an ultimate craving for family love and connection, which absolutely jars with the behaviours of the characters. All in all, a brilliant dark horror book. The next is a classic British horror novel by James Herbert. It's Rats, as in the rodent rats. Oh my god. I can't remember when I first read this. It was a good, 5-10 years ago maybe. And it still gives me the heebie-jeebies. It's basically about a terrifying infestation of giant rats, like dog level sized rats, and these are flesh-eating rats that swarm through London, basically attacking humans and creating chaos. And as the city of London descends into utter fear, there's a small group of survivors that decide to take on this growing threat before it's too late. Man, if you have any fear of rodents in any shape or form, especially rats, do not read this book. I didn't think I had until I read it, and I was like, oh my god, could you imagine rats the size of dogs? Like Lucy, not like Doberman size, I think like Lucy size, my beagle. And terrifying. Also, this literally gave me nightmares for a good wee while after reading it. Weirdly enough, I think this was my first ever James Herbert, and I don't know if I've read any others. If you've read James Herbert and I've liked Rat or read any of his other books that you think I might like, given the gist of this video so far, let me know in the comments, because I'm here to be terrified. The things we cannot see are often the most terrifying. Yep, this is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. Now, I think I saw the movie before I read the book and loved it so much when then I discovered it was a book, I read the book. Even if you've seen the movie, definitely read the book. This is dystopian, chilling horror where if you've not read the book or seen the movie, it's basically a tense post-apocalyptic story where an unseen force drives anyone that looks at it into utter madness and death. Mallory, who is the main character, has to navigate this new terrifying world with her kids, and she has to do it blindfolded because that's the only way to protect them from going utterly mad and dying. And so this story is fundamentally about them navigating this new world blindfolded. Her and her kids, as they look for some place of sanctuary, all in a world where being able to see equals certain doom. So the level of tenseness in this book is... Oof. I get the chills even just talking about it. And the movie is a fantastic adaptation. Obviously, if you've seen the movie, you kind of will get some spoilers, but I say it does not detract from reading the book. Definitely read it. Also, the book is really good in that it has two timelines. You've got Mallory's past and then present time. What I would say is, like, even if you've seen the film, which I had before I read the book, it gives you so much more, as is often the case, and there's so much more depth to the story. It's just utterly haunting and filled to the brim with suspense. It's one of those books that was just an absolute wild ride. I consumed it within 48 hours and wow, I was both simultaneously scared to pick it up and terrified to put it down. Next up is such a surprise read for me, which I think I read last year. It's The Haar by David Sodergren. So in this book, we have an elderly protagonist called Muriel, who lives in kind of like a remote Scottish village, which is basically under threat by developers. And she's desperately fighting to save and retain her home when a dark turn happens in this village and a mysterious fog comes in, which is known as the Haar. And this eerie frog either brings redemption or madness to those it touches, releasing deadly secrets upon the town. We have an isolated Scottish setting. The senior main character, I freaking love senior main characters. Her name's Muriel and she's utterly fabulous. Plus creepy folklore horror and an atmosphere that just made this an compelling and creepy read. It's also a creature feature horror with really, really descriptive body gore, whilst, though, at the same time telling the really dark and sad story of grief and loss, as well as revenge. Honestly, I had this book on my shelf for ages and I was gutted I hadn't picked it up sooner, and basically I now need to check out Sodergren's back catalogue. The next one is a short story collection, which isn't my normal go-to type or format of storytelling, but I picked this one up randomly last year, I think, or the year before, on Kindle Unlimited, because I liked the sound of it, and it's At Home with the Horrors by Sammy Scott. I had never heard of the book or read the author before, but I gave it 5 stars. It's basically a collection of short stories that reflect on sort of everyday life and kind of transform it into haunting nightmares, where familiar spaces within homes are turned into menacing terror. But Sammy Scott does a really good job of exploring grief, guilt and fear about how even your home can feel terrifyingly unsafe. Thankfully, I actually was reading this when I was away for the weekend, so I wasn't actually in the house, which I do wonder if made the reading experience a smidgen less terrifying for me. And normally when I read short story collections, I maybe find 1 or 2 in the collection like outstanding 5 out of 5, and then maybe a mix of 3 or 4s. Hands down, I loved each and every one of these stories. They all had their own terrifying twist. Each of them felt both unique and creepy. Not only was I utterly disturbed and got the chills from reading this, there was a couple of times where I recall gasping out loud. So that's all I'm going to say. I can't even remember the names of some, like there were so many. I don't actually think that it's more like, I don't actually think I could pick one. It's all, I can't even remember how many short stories, but that's, I think maybe 11 or 12 short stories, maybe, so many as that, and a novella at the end. So good. Now, this cannot be a list of book recommendations that scare me without mentioning the master himself, Stephen King. Now, trying to pick one Stephen King book that really scared me was quite tough, but I'm going to punt for The Shining, and the reason being, one of my first few Kings that I read, and still to this day, one of the most terrifying. Now, if you've not seen the movie or read the book, here's a quick synopsis. So, there's about a family that go and stay in a hotel as like their winter gatekeepers, like whatever, like looking after it in the winter months when it's shut. The Overlook Hotel. I nearly forgot what it was called. So there's Jack Torrance and his wife and his son, Danny. Red Ram. Yeah, that one. They're kind of trapped during the winter months. And his son, Danny, has what we believe to be the site, The Shining. And Jack, who's kind of thought he was going to be there to write his book, is actually descending into utter madness and taking his family with him, all under the influence of the building's like dark supernatural powers. And that's where his son Danny, whose sort of psychic abilities known as the Shining, reveal the hotel's terrifying secrets. And so the family stay becomes a fight for survival. Now, what can I say about this book? If you've only ever seen the film and you liked the film or loved the film, 100% read this book. There is so much more in this book that explains one or two scenes in the film that you kind of just seem weird and you're not really sure. You know it's reflecting some weird backstory of the hotel, but apart from that, there's so much more depth that goes into the characters and the backstory of the Overlook than is in the film. Like, I can't even... I don't want to spoil it by saying some of the scenes that, like, weird, terrifying, surreal, but hands down, this is still one of my favourite Stephen King books. I've reread it numerous times. I've watched the movie a gazillion times. And of course, you also have Dr. Sleep. Right, so I'm checking. The Shining came out in 1977, and then the follow-up, Dr. Sleep, came out in 2013, and I remember getting it as soon as it came out. I was so super excited. And it was a good one. So there, you have 2 for 1, The Shining and Shining 2. Next up is one of my favourite horrors in recent years. It is Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Baztericca. One word, and if you don't like it, not in real life but in literature or movies, maybe avoid cannibalism. So this is a chilling dystopian novel where we live in a world where humans can no longer eat meat because it's no longer safe. I think a virus or whatever, it makes humans ill, you know, so humans start farming humans for meat. But a man who works in the human meat factory starts to question the whole premise of farming humans for meat. The story explores dehumanization, complicity, and the terrifying ease with which humans adapt to a whole other level of horror. Now, I think Tender as the Flesh is Augustina Baztericca's first novel. It was certainly, I think, the first novel that came out in translation when it was translated. She's since had a story collection and then a new one out this year called The Unworthy. This is still hands down my favourite. The others are really good too, but this was so unique and vulgar whilst also being poignant that I would recommend it to any horror fan. It's less than 200 pages, 209 to be exact, and it pulled me in from page 1 and literally chewed me up until the very end. I don't even know if that's a thing. I don't even know what that means. But it was a wild ride and I devoured it. Probably not the best word to use when describing this book. The premise is so clever and the execution is both simultaneously beautiful and vomit-inducing. I don't think... I mean, maybe The Troop was the only other one, but this punches above it from a point of being really addictive read. Like, I was compulsively reading it whilst also wanting to vomit, as you can imagine. The storytelling and the character development is an utter masterpiece. And the thing is, it's not just about like cannibalism per se. It's portraying a whole commentary on society's willful ignorance, selfish status-seeking behaviour, and their society's utter disregard for sentient beings, even when they're humans. And OMFG, the ending, right? I can't even talk about it, but read it and come back to me. And a quote that sums this book up is, "The human being is the cause of all evil in this world. We are our own virus." Given everything right now. Poignant. And last but not least, another epic classic. It is Psycho by Robert Bloch. Yeah, if you've seen the movie, still read the book. Because unsurprisingly, I have seen the movie several times before I read the book. Actually, before I even realised it was based on a book. It is a classic psychological horror novel about Norman Bates, a reclusive motel owner with a very disturbing secret and a particularly fractured mind. And so when a young woman goes missing after checking in, a chilling mystery starts to unfold, leading to one of the most iconic and unsettling twists in horror fiction, which most of us might know if you've been around for more than 10 years. Oh God, that doesn't mean if you're 11 you should know this, but who knows, probably when I was 11 I did. Again, this is another tiny book, it's just smidgen over 200 pages. And I would say the movie is very close to the book, like it really does it justice, but I would say this book explores so much more about Norman Bates and his mother, so much more about their relationship that isn't at all explored in the film, and makes the whole story far creepier and creepier than you could imagine. Basically, if you've not read Psycho, it's an utter classic must read for horror fans. So there we go, friends. I don't know if you like being scared as much as I do, but if you do, and if you haven't read any of these books, let me know. Actually, I won't finish my sentences first, Johanna. If you want to read any of these books, let me know in the comments. Also, let me know what are some of your scariest books, because I would like to, as another booktuber I think did, was get the scariest books some of her friends had put in the comments, and she then read them and made a video about it. So that sounds like an interesting challenge for me. What I would say is, if you've got this far, actually if you don't like being scared or horror books, thanks. I'm surprised the book synopsises haven't terrified you already. But if you've got this far and don't know what to say, please give me a screaming face emoji. Tell me what is your scariest book, and I'm going to collect them all, because I feel pretty soon I need a good scare. So thanks for watching, for liking and commenting. And if you don't already, please do subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you in another bookish video very, very soon. Cheerio!